So everyone at some point in their life, if they're approaching Judaism, will do some kind of like heavy self-nullification. I don't know what that is for different people, but I know what it was for me, and I know what it is for many guys in yeshiva. I don't know what girls do exactly. Maybe they like buy a new wardrobe that totally that nullifies anyone paying any attention.
I don't know many girls who have shaved their heads for Jewish. I mean,
right.
A girl wouldn't do that.
Anyway, but I myself, I remember the day I took off all my hair and went for the full, like self-nullification. But what I'd not realized was something amazing is on my way home from the barber, I was on my way to the old city, and I realized that I've become totally anonymous. No one's paying any attention to me at all. Like I'm like an extra in a film. Like I'm just not of any consequence whatsoever. And no one paid any attention to me. I just walked by. I mean, if I didn't say hi to someone, no one was going to be saying hi to me or looking at me at all. Which was the first time I realized after a long period of time that I had been drawing a lot of attention my way, and which was pretty interesting. Could you do me a favor and sit, like, I don't know, maybe right in the center of this camera, or maybe just one of you volunteer to sit right. Maybe that seat back there is perfect. Yeah, that's a good spot. Good spot. Oh yeah, yeah. I feel bad that the people watching the live feed are maybe feeling like I'm looking at everyone but them. This way, every time I look at you, I'm looking right at the world around. Now, anyway, so I realized I'd been drawing a lot of attention toward myself without even knowing it. I was unconsciously doing that. And I didn't realize I had that fringe benefit with my hair. But it was a fringe benefit. And the hair is the ego, I mean, for men and women. And something interesting about hair is a couple of interesting things about hair. One of them is that my haircut now is the inverse of might makes right cultures. The might makes right cultures they generally will shave right here. They shave the sides of the head. You see like a lot of macho guys will shave over here and leave more hair up here. But it's not just that, it's the Mohawk Indians, our warrior tribe, hardcore warrior tribe, and their hair's up here, shaved on the sides. The Yanomami Indians of the Amazon forest are also
Roman style.
What?
Like Roman style.
Yeah, Roman style. And the Yanomami Indians also just intuitively, like that's the haircut. You might have seen it on National Geographic. It looks like a mushroom. They have really fine straight hair. It just kind of mushrooms up, and they shave around the side. And but you notice also in athletes and aggressive sports, they'll often shave on the sides and leave hair on the top. And the Nazis also shaved on the sides. And there's something about it that's aggressive. And it's hard to understand exactly, but it's aggressive. And aggressive means ego because my ego wants what it wants, which is basically recognition and significance and power, and I will be aggressive if someone messes with that power. And that's the place that people will most likely be aggressive, is if their power is being at all what's the word I'm looking for, compromised by another. And so those are games men play. I imagine women play similar games with the power, but I don't know what it is exactly. But it's probably also related to hair in some way or another. Now, the Torah prohibits certain hair cuts on men. One of those is to cut the beard. That's one of them. Men do get away with loopholes, using like electric shavers where the blade doesn't actually touch the skin. So it's like, I mean, these are like, what God's really saying is have a beard. When he's saying don't cut these areas, he's saying have a beard. And it's very interesting that he says have a beard because do you realize that if there's a man, and it could be your own father, or brother or someone close to your grandfather, if they don't have a beard, you realize that you have no idea what they look like. I mean, you don't know what God gave them as a face. You don't know what their face is. And here you've been relating to this person who's pretty close to you for many years, and you have no idea what they look like. You don't know the face God gave them. There's no way to know that. And that gets really interesting when you start to realize that we all relate to each other based on our looks, at least to a certain respect. We are relating to one another based on our looks, yet we've all been relating to people that we don't know what they look like. We have no idea what they look like. All we're seeing is just some adulterated version of a girl's face because they've shaved off the hair, and they've left the girl's face because women, thank God, don't grow facial hair, at least till they're really old, and hopefully deal with it. Unless you live in my courtyard in Jerusalem, where you just become the bearded old lady. And anyway, but so who are you really relating to? And when someone's got their face, altered by hair removal, and it's so accepted, it's very strange how it is considered an accepted norm to not have facial hair, which is like God gave you. I mean, even identical twins, apparently, I've heard, don't have, like, they can have everything the same, including the hair on their head, but their beards could come out totally different. Like, one guy's got this, like, big split down the middle, and, he's got they're flying over his shoulders when he walks, this side and that side. And the other guy's got this, like, totally squared off thing going on. And they could have totally different beards, identical twins. And because the beard is unique and specific to you. And there were great Kabbalists who used to speak on beards. They could actually read they could read faces in general, but beards were telling a lot of information. And why men get beards and women don't is because the beard is drawing down the mind to the heart, which is a difficult thing for men. Men are less likely to connect emotionally with thoughts than women are. Women, it's not a long trip between thinking something and crying about it. You can think it, and the tears will come quickly. Men, doesn't come so quickly unless they're trained. I'm trained. If I think it and it's sad, I will be crying quickly. But it took me years to do that. I was a He-Man, like surfer guy, like, karate man bruise on the inside. And I was not going to cry over anything. And I didn't cry for years. And eventually realized that was affecting my happiness, because happy people cry a lot. And if you're going to be a happy person, you got to learn to cry. Because it's a valve called emotion, and the same valve for joy is the same valve for sad. And so if you can't have it both ways, you can't lock down your sadness and expect the joy. You have to be able to express both, and then you have full use of your emotional system. Now, women's hair is also very interesting. One thing is that men don't realize, like you men don't realize, that who are in this class, that women notice that you check them out. And the reason is because they checked you out way before. You realized it was on the radar. Okay, women have an instinctual awareness, and if you check them out, you're so busted, and because you don't even know they notice. Except women give a little clue that they've been checked out. And the women cannot help from doing this. It's a trick that a lot of men don't know about. But you can always tell if a woman knows you checked her out. And the answer is that they will touch their hair. And they cannot stop themselves from doing it. They can't stop themselves from doing it. The second you check out a woman, she will touch her hair. By the way, your mitzvah is not to be checking out women. As the Torah says, men are not to be checking out women. As the Torah says, Lo tatu, lo sasur achrei, levavach ma'achrei nechem asher tem zanim achreim. Don't stray after your heart and after your eyes. Now, if you're just trying to get around town and your eyes, just in your own navigation can't help but notice people, and including people of the opposite gender, okay, as Rabbi Noach Weinberg Zatzal, the previous Rosh Yeshiva Eshet Torah, used to say that the first look is free because you're just trying to get around town. But the second look, now you're going to pay. Yeah? Because the Torah commands us not to be, having our eyes stray after our desires. The Torah commands that. And so we've got to work on that. In fact, the Kabbalists teach us that there's an angel on each eyelid, and its job is to locate women for men. And you could be walking down a busy street and like a block and a half, 2 blocks away, in the mix of Manhattan or whatever it is, there could be just one woman way down there. You'll see her. That's the one you'll see. And there's 2 angels that are there to direct you to them, to that focal point. And they're good angels. They're actually good angels. Yeah. They're kind of neutral. It's hard to say whether they're good or bad, but they direct the man's eyes to find her. And then what happens when he finds her is he now averts his eyes from there. And when he averts his eyes from there to fulfill that commandment of not straying after one's eyes, when he averts his eyes, there's a window of prayer that opens. And he can ask for anything he wants in that moment. Most men blow this. Most men, no window. Hey, the window opened, but it was closed as soon as he looked again. Because his job is not to look again. And so it's an actual prayer moment. And why? Because his showing of strength, the raising of the soul's strength over the body's base desire. That show of strength, that's called strength, by the way, in Judaism. Because Ezu Gibor, who's the strong man? The one who has control over himself. So if he's able to control these urges, he is considered strong. And when he shows that valor, when he shows that strength, it opens up a prayer window, and he can now ask for something very specific. And now this doesn't work if you just go out to do this. You're not supposed to just go out to do this. This all reminds me of a really funny story. And the funny story was that we were at Eshet Torah, here in Eshet Torah, and at the Purim party where men are drinking wildly and dancing. And there was a women's section up above. It's our current base midrash, our current study hall. There's a women's section up above where it's a balcony. And the women look down from there. But all the good yeshiva boys are dancing away in a big circle, dancing around. It's like a mosh pit of like 10, 15 drunk thick, and just cruising around the mosh pit the whole time with a live band. But what happens after a couple rounds, these guys, they can't help but just take a little peek up to the balcony, which, and when they do, they see there's a big sign that none of the women can see. They're all at this balcony with a guard rail, like a glass guardrail there with, what do you call it's tinted, it's a, the nice glass? It's kind of green and frosted glass. Yeah, it's not transparent, it's translucent. And the frosted glass, there's a big sign there that says the first look's free. So if you watch the guys dancing around, you would see them crack up. Yeah, you just see a guy start laughing all of a sudden because he saw the sign that said the first look's free. But here's the funny part. That's not the funny part, even though Aviva thinks it's the funny part, but Aviva thinks every part's the funny part. So no, Aviva, the funny part's coming. So it turns out that underneath that sign that you could never have seen at full dance mode, underneath that sign was another sign hanging under it that says, now you're going to pay. And you could only really see it if you looked back. After another 10 rounds around the mosh pit, you finally, it got the better of you and you looked up and it says, now you're going to pay. And that's still not the funny part. There was an even finer print, little sign underneath that one that said, now you're going to hell. Which was just for fun, obviously. In Judaism, I know Christians take hell really seriously. Judaism, hell's just something you make jokes about. Now, it's not that we don't believe that everyone's going to pay for every thought, speech, and action of their lives, but we have it, first of all, a little easier in that we have Yom Kippur every year. So we do get a factory reset every year, which is obviously a fabulous addition to being Jewish. And, of course, the one day you do not want to die is the day before Yom Kippur. And ideally, the best day to die of the entire year would be the day after Yom Kippur. But you do get but that doesn't mean wear I hate Arab t-shirt in the Arab Quarter. Okay, that's don't do that on the day after Yom Kippur because that's suicide, and not an option. Anyway, but we do get a factory reset every year, no, we do believe in it. We do believe in it, but we use it more for a joke than anything else. So anyway, the fine print was now you're going to hell. So you would see people really crack up when they would go around the circle and notice the fine print, that third sign. Now you can laugh, Aviva. I didn't know you could do that on command. That was good. Okay, now that's all right. I didn't realize I could just ask you to laugh and you'd do it.
Oh.
Yes. That's what I meant, on command. Okay, anyway, but women do touch their hair. Now you'll notice that the ego of women is also the hair. One example is, and when I say the ego, what is the ego of a woman? What is her power? So the power, it's interesting, the power for men is usually, if you look in history, it usually has to do with property. It also has to do with conquering a female, but it has to do with mostly property, and it has to do with security, and meaning amassing wealth so you're more secure, you're more virile. You could outlast things by having, savings, and, a lot of external signs of showing materialist success. These are all signs of male power. For females, they also have different versions of their power, but one of their most important methods of power is power over men. Power over men, which obviously has kosher and non-kosher expressions. It has kosher and non-kosher expressions. The non-kosher expressions is where they're just trying to, they're making up, this whole male hierarchy, what's it called, the patriarchy, that whole patriarchy, identity politic garbage stuff. That's the non-rectified parts. But there is a more rectified power that women have, and that is their ability to guide their husband, and also not just to guide their husband, but to maintain their husband's attention, because men are by nature polygamous, whether you like it or not. It's not very nice, but by nature they're polygamous. They're conquerors, and they move on to their next kill. That's the way men work. And so when a man makes that great sacrifice of all women in the world to his wife, the wife is empowered, obviously, because she has won the contest. She has beat out 3.5 billion women in the, it's no small thing. It's something to be proud of. She has won the race of 3.5 billion women, and that's not a small victory. But she cannot rest on her laurels, because the nature of men, she has to conquer him constantly, and she has to conquer him wisely, because if she tries to conquer him jealously or harshly. So what's that going to do? What does the man say if his wife's overly jealous and overly expresses jealousy of his interaction, let's say at work or in any other professional place? What?
Find another one.
Find another one. That was so well said in your Guatemalan accent. Find another one. Well, no, they're not going to necessarily get divorced, but what men often do if their wives are overly jealous in their conquering, someone told me the rhyme. What was the rhyme? What was it? If you paid for the crime, if you do the time, you might as well do the crime. Something like that.
If you do the crime, you do the time.
If you can't pay the time, don't do the crime.
No, but in this particular case, the man will say, like, he's spending all his time behind bars of his jealous wife. So he's like, might as well do the crime if I'm already doing the time. You understand? So women don't realize how badly it can backfire to be jealous. Really not good. And especially for a man who's good, but whatever, we have to work on that stuff.
Can't that go the other way too? It's not good for the man to be jealous of the wife.
If the man's jealous of the wife, then there's bigger issues. They need help quickly. Yeah. They need help quickly, and they need intervention. The woman's jealous of the husband, as long as he's in the clear. I mean, he's got to speak to his own mentor and make sure he's being appropriate. But as long as he's being appropriate, then she needs to work on something. She's got to work on something. Sometimes there was an abandonment. I've had many cases where nothing bigger than her parents. When put in hypnosis, she got down to like 2.5 years old. Her parents went away for 3 weeks, and she only found this out. This only was confirmed later by her own parents that their parents went overseas. They would have come back, but they were overseas, and the babysitter kept explaining to him that she's too young to understand that I keep telling her they'll be back in 3 weeks. You just they'll be back in 10 days. But the kid wasn't old enough to process that, and so the kid she slept by the front door. She wouldn't sleep anywhere else. She'd come home from playgroup and just sit by the front door, played by the front door. She just kept waiting, and she finally gave up. And she was never the same. Meaning after, I don't know, into the 3rd week, she was done. And then she mourned them, and then they came home. But it was over. And so now she's married for like decades, and the husband can't make a move without getting the 3rd degree. You understand? Like, I finally told the husband, I'm like, listen, something strange happened on the airplane with some lady who like went schizo and like had to be removed from the plane. If you're going to tell that story when you get home for Shabbos, make it a man. Just make it and tell a story about a man that went schizo. Just change. I mean, that's how bad it is. So like, just change the gender. And he did, and it's been a lot better. There are no females in the world for this family, for this husband. Every gender is shifted for their interactions so that he's not triggering her. Maybe it was a man. Maybe it really was a schizo man who freaked out. Anyway, so that's another form of power, another form of ego. And what's interesting is how that shows up so powerfully in the hair. And you'll notice it a lot in like commercials. How in commercials you'll see, for example, now, by the way, I haven't seen a commercial on a television in God knows when, but I do recall that a commercial might be difficult to tell if it was a car commercial or a shampoo commercial. I mean, in the end, it was for a Corvette or something, It was for some like man car, but there was some woman, like moving her hair around a lot sitting on the hood, for the whole car commercial, and it was like, I mean, can you be any more like explicit and base about this, the marketing of this car? But it was definitely about her hair. It wasn't just the woman; it was her hair was being featured majorly, and her hair was like in every kind of possible position throughout the commercial. There, yeah.
Is that why today a lot of the women that wear shadels, they wear these, sometimes you see them, they've got these long shadels, these very expensive shadels.
Oh, meaning to get back some ego with this. Yeah, so he's bringing up when observant women wear wigs, that they're often fancier or maybe even nicer than their own hair. I mean, that's what happens if a woman's hair isn't the softest hair in the world, but there's money there, so why not spend $3,000 and suddenly have the softest hair in the world? And so that certainly happens a lot. And yeah, so what about it?
I'm saying some of these more dress inappropriately, but still have these long shades, and that's the purpose as well. It's a different topic we're going.
Yeah. I don't know if we should discuss wigs so much here, before someone starts throwing darts. It's an interesting thing, the whole wig thing. I think this is one of the things you can trust Bali Tshuva about, meaning people raised non-observant. When they become observant, they develop certain sensitivities to things, and they one of the things they're most incredulous about. The word incredulous is a fancy word of saying that they just don't understand, like they just don't get it, is wigs. Like if Bali Chuvas don't understand why women decided to cover their hair with more hair. Why are they covering their hair with more hair? That just, you'd agree, like that's strange? Completely agree. Any other people weren't raised observant here? You weren't raised observant, were you? Is that a little strange? They would cover their hair with more hair? No big deal for you? Why?
I feel like it's they're saving themselves for their true love.
What, their real hair?
Yeah.
But the fake hair can look nicer than the
That's
real
what I'm
hair.
saying.
Yeah, maybe they're just going to keep on the fake hair. What?
Why don't you just cover
Let's do this.
I mean, there's a lot.
That's the true reason.
I mean, a lot of women also wear like scarves around their heads as well.
We're just discussing whether covering hair with hair is strange
I
for you.
think it's
Were you raised observant?
Yeah, no, it seems like a paradox. Because they cover their hair, which is supposed to be like nice and gem, but you have these shadels that are $5,000 that are probably much nicer than the actual product.
Uh-huh.
So it's, yeah, that's my opinion.
Okay. No. Anyway, it is a little strange. I personally, so far I've married off 2 daughters, and both of them are wearing these things on their head that look a lot like someone's hair. And yeah, it is someone's hair. Yeah, I can't even say the word. And anyway, but well, for me it was hard because I was very excited to have graduated this little tiny kid that I held into an adult married woman. Like that was my excitement. Like, oh my gosh, what a victory! Like especially in 2019, to take a kid, a baby, and mature her all the way to full responsibility in her own home, a Torah home. Like I can't think of anything that's a bigger challenge or a bigger mazel tov if you do it, like a bigger victory. Everyone who said mazel tov to me that night, I didn't take the mazel tov as like mazel tov on the marriage. I took the mazel tov as mazel tov on pulling off the ultimate feat, the ultimate, incredible challenge that you pulled this off. And by the way, I have a lot of friends who became observant at the same time as I did, who made all the commitments I did. And their kids are all over the map, meaning they're very far from being able have these weddings happen at such time in such timely fashion. Now I don't know who's responsible for that. Is that my wife? Is it me? Is it both of us? Is it the community we live in? Is it the Hasidut, the Hasidic group we're part of? Like, I don't know how we did it. I really don't know how we did it because I'm basically a Meshugana but maybe but I make a kiddush like a Meshugana too, and maybe that kiddush was like, Daddy takes mitzvahs seriously. And they saw me shaking my, my cosmic vegetation every sukkah, and my sukkah holds 100 people, and I take these mitzvahs all the way. So I don't know if that was because I know other people who did that, and kids are far from marriageable. Anyway, so here I was having this victory. And I wanted that she shouldn't still look like a Bahara. You know what a Bahara? She shouldn't still look like a Bahara is Hebrew for a single girl. Like after all that, the wedding happens and she looks like a single girl. Only in fancier clothing and nicer hair. And it's like, what about this is clearly a married woman here? Where's the victory on, I want to see the victory. I don't want to just... You were probably raised observant. Can you guys tell a wig a mile away?
Yeah. Well, depends.
She has says depends.
You can get read earphones.
But you can tell a mile away. I think different people, you can tell. I think what happens is it depends. There's two personality types: ones who notice details, and others notice. How do you say it? The gestalt.
You're right. It's a whole package.
What?
Mise en scène.
Mise en scène. That's the word.
Clothes.
I'm a mise en scène guy. I'm not seeing like what's real, and what's not on the detail level. Okay, that's a French word. Mise en scène.
It's for film. It's referring to like if you're gonna like what you see on the film, everything that's there at once.
Mise en scène. I probably can't use that. I love words because I'm a public speaker, but that one's gonna fall flat on a lot of people. I think. I never heard it in my life. The mise en scène. What'd you say? There's probably a good English word. I didn't even hear what you said. I already asked twice. I didn't ask a third time. Hair, ego, so and power. That's kind of our discussion for today. So. Oh, yeah. So the last point I wanted to make on this subject is something very interesting, and the question is, and I'm going to ask you all a trick question. So I'm already letting you know it's a trick. But here's the trick question: according to Judaism, does a married woman have to cover her hair? Now, obviously, it's a trick question because everyone you know who's an observant Jewish woman has her hair covered. So. Clearly, whether she wants to or not, it's covered. Because obviously Judaism, what would you say, says you have to cover your hair? Yes or no?
Yes.
For sure. 100%. That was the trick question. No. No, they don't have to cover their hair. And what's the proof? The proof is that you can go to weddings. Not every wedding, but most weddings. Lots of weddings. You can go to a wedding. And here's a woman who's been married, and everyone's watched it. There could be 200, 300, 400, 500 witnesses who all know she's married now. And the ring's on the finger, the chuppah's ended, the glass has been broken, they've already been in the private room together, and now she dances the night away for the next several hours with her hair uncovered, with her hair, her natural hair. Is she married or is she not married? Which one? 100% married, hair uncovered. Well, when's the next time you see her? If you're family, let's say.
At the Shabbat bracha.
Right, the next day.
Yes.
Hair covered or uncovered?
Covered.
Covered. Now, you don't have to all yell this out at once, but what do you think happened between the time that they left the wedding hall and the Sheva brachas? Please don't say it out loud. Something took place without giving it any detail. So something took place, and that thing that took place has now made it such that her obligation is now to cover her hair from now on. Now, why? What does that have to do with the price of eggs? What's the connection? What is the connection? So to paint this picture, I have to bring it back a few years. And back a few years, I mean that in two ways. One is to take you back to, let's say 50 years ago, more actually, 50 years ago, when girls got married at much younger ages. But if you go back 200 years ago, they got married at much younger ages. Because 200 years ago, and still in some primitive countries like Iran, girls still get married at 12 years old. But in the rest of the world, girls got married at 12 years old, including the Ashkenazic world and the Sephardic world and Jewish, Gentile. It didn't matter. Girls got married at 12, 13, 14 years old, because to be a woman is a vulnerable thing. And the obligation of the father is to take very good care of his daughter. And the way he takes best care of her is to make sure you put her in good hands as a wife to someone. And that's why in Yiddish, the word for a son-in-law is adim. Adim. What's the word adim mean? You know the word adim? Witness or testimony. Edut is testimony. So a son-in-law in Yiddish is called adim because that son-in-law is testimony that the father took care of his daughter. He didn't throw her to the wolves, but rather he made sure that she got married and he was diligent with his daughter and made sure that she went straight from his house straight to his house, from his house to his house. And so that's why the son-in-law is called a testimony. And so the the 12-year-old girl or the 13-year-old, 14-year-old girl, however old she was or young she was, lived in a world that was always directed and led by men. Whether it was the father of the house or the king of the province or the prince or the president or the rabbi of the community or the clergy, it was always men. It was always men. Male-dominated hierarchies is very, very normal. Now, it's often dangerous, obviously, because hierarchies can shift quickly from a hierarchy of competence, which is what we want. Like, you want hierarchies of competence. If you're getting surgery, you want the most competent surgeon, right? You like hierarchies of competence. What you don't like is hierarchies of power. And sadly, many hierarchies of competence devolve into hierarchies of power very quickly. And that happens everywhere. I mean, for example, even yeshivas, when a Rosh Yeshiva passes away, it will often devolve into hierarchies of power left over after the great competent leader moves on to the next world. So this happens naturally, and it happens in most countries as well. Hierarchies of power, and obviously that's why Trump is so scary, because he does want to get rehired as president, but that second term could be pretty freaky because whatever competence he's shown, which I'm not sure because I'm not into politics, whatever competence he's shown in the first 4 years could devolve quickly for a man with his character. So that's like, I mean, every Jewish person's happy he likes Jews, but how quickly could that shift? That guy's he's like a time bomb. You can't tell he's here today and gone tomorrow. So there's no way to predict him. And so it's not so simple, a second term with a guy like that. Anyway, but back to that is that hierarchies were generally male dominated. And so if you're a 12-year-old girl or a 14-year-old girl, 13-year-old girl, and you've lived for the last 12, 13, 14 years in the power of men, it's only at the night of the wedding that she realizes her power. She realizes that this man she married has been reduced to a snoring blob. And is like good for nothing now. Like he's like utterly useless, and not to mention he'll probably not wake up very well either the next day. And anyway, she suddenly realizes who's actually in power, subtly in power, but she realizes her power, and power is the scourge of spirituality. You can't have them both happen. Power and spirituality don't go together. If you're in a place of power, you're going to have to let go of your connection to God, ultimately, because God's the power. God is the power. This is why it's so important in speaking of devolving hierarchies. It's so important that one of the things that keeps hierarchies from devolving is that leaders have something above them. This was the danger. You see the great danger of atheistic hierarchies, like what happened in Germany or what happened in Russia, was there was no one above them. And when no one's above them, so then then the power comes. And then if no one's above you, man, you're the powerful person. And if you're the powerful person, watch out. Because this is no longer about competence, but it's about wielding power. And it could very likely, and is most likely, that the greater skill sets are happening by others. Why? Because you're one person in power, where you could have millions, if not a billion, people under you that are breeding grounds for skills and competence. And so you can't help but, hey, there's nothing above me, so I'm the top. And so I'm going to start killing people who are threats to me. And we've seen that happen in the last century, in some of its worst ways. Yeah.
What about the church? They have somebody above them. Also, the hierarchy wasn't that good.
Yeah, I don't want to comment on the church, but the whatever insecurities were going on over there, such that they needed to be kind of force themselves on the world around them. It's not so clear with the church, because the church was married into an expansionist society in Europe. The nature of Noah's son Japhet, the oldest son, who ultimately becomes, if you follow his bloodline, it goes straight to Europe. And the word Japhet doesn't just mean external beauty, which is very telling as well, because Europeans, Westerners, are very externality oriented, and compared to Semites, which are, the word Shem means meaning orientation. And they're much more meaning oriented, whereas Yafeh is, Noah's son Japhet is external. It's going to be externally oriented, but the word Japhet actually also means expand. And Noah's blessing to Japhet was that he should expand, but dwell in the tents of Shem, meaning expand, you're going to be expansionist. You're going to be imperialists. But you must dwell ultimately in the tent of Shem, because Shem means meaning. If you don't have values, if your tent isn't dwelling in the values of Semites are interested in value systems, in right and wrong and stuff like that. That's Semites. Westerners aren't that interested. But comes along, the church marries expansionists, so you're going to have an expansionist church, and that's exactly what happened with the what was it called when the church went out? Yeah, that's a missionaries. But what was it called? Not the Inquisition, but the Crusades. The Crusades is it's a marriage of Europeans' expansionism with kind of a godly whatever, and not to mention the fact that it's more man-made. Obviously, Christianity is more of a man-made thing, and as long as Jews are around, you're going to feel a little insecure, because they know every Christian believes that the Torah is divine. It's not man-made. Every Christian knows that. It's part of part of their belief structure. And so it's important to them that there are no Jews. Because if they're Jews, that means that the old book is the new book, meaning the old book's the real book. You can't also have Jews around, because then that's a fulfillment of the eternal covenant to the Jewish people, that the Jewish people will be an eternal nation. And so that was a major issue to the Christians. And having Jews around was a deep concern for them. Now they've tried to play around with that now, and now that it's thousands of years later and we're still here. It's like whack-a-mole. You can't get rid of us. That game in front of shopping centers where the mole keeps coming up and you have to hit it with a mallet. Jews are like whack-a-mole. We just keep popping up everywhere because the Torah promised that we would be here. Now, anyway, but that night she realizes her power, and that from that then on she must cover her hair, and that covering of the hair is a humbling, so that she can have a relationship with God, because power in the heart of a human being is incompatible with a relationship with God. And we're not going to have every married woman be cut off from God. They're raising our children. And if we want our children to have any relationship with God, it's our wives that are going to make sure that happens. But how are our wives going to have it when they realize that they're actually the power behind everything? Right? Behind every great man is a surprised woman. That was a joke. Behind every great man is a great woman. And she's really behind there in a big way. Behind the scenes, but running the show. Anyway, so today was all about hair. We actually did an entire class about hair today. Shalom, everyone.